who's joined this. Um, I'm really, really thrilled that those of you working in the professional development area with teachers in schools are able to join me to talk about digital technologies, particularly in secondary schools, so that I can help my students think more carefully about what it is they are having to think about when they go into schools. So we have a few questions to think about, like what is it that grads might need to think about when they are looking at digital technologies, and things like, so what is going on in schools? What are some of the significant trends that you think are happening? And then we'll have a few more questions as we go. So we're going to just try and see where this takes us. So let's go. So Lee, thank you.
Right. So in secondary schools in particular, first of all, I'd like to say that there are pockets of good practice, but what we see across our region is very much they are pockets of good practice. There doesn't seem to be school-wide good examples, I suppose, that we could refer back to. What does everyone else think?
Yes, I mean, certainly you tend to get them, for instance, in the PE, dance, drama, that sort of thing. You get a lot of use of video, for example, where they're using it to, students are videoing their practice and then using it to be able to get feedback from others, but also for self-assessment purposes. So in those areas, there's quite a large use of it. Also, you know, sometimes in subjects like English, for instance, there may be use of it because of videoing speeches or some form of oral language. But some of the other areas have not been as quick to uptake these things. Although it does vary considerably from school to school, because you can find some areas there may be a tech department that's using it greatly, or a maths department or whatever, but yeah, often not throughout the whole school.
If I was asked about what are the things that are quite common, I would say that people are moving to flipping some of their learning, so they are getting some flipping going on. Google Classroom is very popular with the secondary schools, whereas Harper Dashboard tends to be more popular with the primary schools. So there are sort of certain applications and types of pedagogies that are happening in secondary schools.
So Lee, when you talk about flipped classrooms, how well are teachers understanding how to actually embed that as a practice, rather than just putting homework first? Are they understanding some of those kinds of things?
Well, there are lots of different models of flipping to begin with, so it's really particularly tricky. You have the traditional American model where you have the homework comes first on video, and then you have the discussions and the activities in class. But I'm thinking that people are actually using flipping more for individualising their learning, so that students can work at their own pace within the classroom setting. So the learning is on a video, they can go into Moodle or Google Apps or sites and see their videos there. Is that the kind of thing, Micah, you're seeing?
Just going back to what you were saying before about how practice can vary from school to school, even within a school. I've also seen some quite disparate practice within a department, where there might be one or two, typically one member of the department that's really looking into it and being quite bold and courageous about trying things out, and others that are quite a bit more reticent, even though there's a good example to follow out there. Someone else taking all the big risks and they can only really need to apply those risks to their own practice, still being a bit shy about it. So secondary schools are quite often spoken about as being siloed within departmental. But then even within departments, there can be quite a bit of disparity in practice.
I so agree. I think it's true, and not only within the department, within the school, but also within the community. I think secondary schools tend to be a lot more siloed.
Great. So how do you think then, given that you've said there are pockets, there's good and slightly creaky practice, as well as people just trying to feel their way into things and taking risks without necessarily knowing what they're doing, and that's not a criticism, it's how we learn. So what is it that might need to happen a little more coherently, do you think?
I think leadership and strategic direction is important, but above all, I believe that the pedagogical change that is needed to happen has to happen first. Right. And so teachers need to think about, how could I do this differently? How could I be not the sage on the stage? How could I use the concept of ARCL, and how can I have contextual learning going on? How can I have all of those future-focused things without the use of digital technologies to support it? So all of the good pedagogies, bring those to the forefront first, and then think about using the digital technologies to support those.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I think also is having a good professional learning community within the school, where it's okay to share. People feel safe to share their practice and to give things a go and make mistakes and say, well, listen, I tried this. It didn't work. Has anyone got any suggestions of how it could help? Or listen, I tried this. It was great. Here's an example of how it worked in my classroom. And that whole sharing learning community needs to be happening for this to work. And it also needs often someone coordinating that as well, rather than sort of just happening ad hoc.
Yeah. And when we go into schools, we often say to the leaders, find someone to lead this change who's a good pedagogical leader rather than a good technical person. Often there's someone in the school who knows how to do all the ins and outs of KMAR, or they know how to do all of the permissions and all that kind of thing, and they know how to do a few whiz-bang things, but it's the pedagogical leader who is the person who will be most useful in driving it.
And particularly in Kura, where the person who is slightly more technologically gifted has a reputation for being so. And so when they are wanting to lead change, drive change in a technological direction, it can by some be too easily dismissed as, that's just the whiz-bang stuff that person does, kind of thing. Whereas if it's coming from a completely different direction, and particularly pedagogy, it can be perhaps an easier uptake. Yeah, exactly.
So then what advice would be your best piece of advice, just off the top of your head, of course, for graduates going into schools on practicum and wanting to try things out? What would you say to them? All of you.
I would say, don't get stuck on one particular platform or one particular tricky thing. Be willing to try things out. Be willing to, and your obligation, of course, is with teaching is inquiry. Be willing to try things out that make a difference to the outcomes for your students.
Brilliant. And Barbara and Micah?
Marie's here. Barbara's not in.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that being willing to give it a go, and having a look. If they've got something that they want to explore with their students, some form of learning, having a look in places like the VLN, the Virtual Learning Network, having a look in there and see what other teachers are using that's working for them to support the learning that they're trying to have happen in the classroom. So, then be willing to just give it a go and be prepared to make mistakes and learn alongside the students and get them to help as well.
Yeah, great. And Micah, do you have anything, from the perspective of working with Māori teachers, Māori students, is there anything that you think would be really helpful for them to think about?
Well, this kind of applies to more than just Māori, but can be particularly applicable as well. Is just to start with your purpose. Start with the reason for doing something or working at the students learn kind of thing. Start from there, and then work your way through the process of your purpose, then how you want something to work, and then what tools you want to use to support that, be they digital, space age or stone age. And then your treatment of the tools that you're using becomes a bit more than just a flashbang 1 or 2 minute exercise dropped into the middle of nowhere in your lesson kind of thing. It becomes more of a comprehensive process with a fundamental drive, as I say, to the purpose.
Thank you. So are you finding particular things that those you work with that seem to really go with what they're trying to achieve when they're using digital technologies in their classrooms, in your experience?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, I was just asking Micah, given those that he works with in particular, are there any particular digital technologies or approaches that he thinks seem to have real kind of synergy with those contexts? I know they've probably got wider applications to other people, but yeah, just wondering if there's anything you've noticed.
The typical complaint you'll hear from Māori medium contexts and Māori language learning contexts is the general lack of Māori language resources, or particularly the Māori medium. So learning using the Māori language as a medium. But that kind of thing has been happening since the 70s and probably beyond. We're just now talking about digital technologies and the lack of Māori language resources there. But what can be encouraged is then the shift from consumption to creation of resources. And that, for Māori students in particular, can be very powerful. Now, concerning digital technologies, things that have, in my experience, have been of great benefit is technologies that involve a certain amount of collaboration. So they can be things like Office 365 or Google Lecture Education, those kinds of things, where first of all they don't feel like the entire responsibility for the creation of something is upon themselves. They have a team that they can share that responsibility with and the creativity with, but also there can be a certain amount of anonymity involved with that kind of work, and to start off with, at least, that can be something of a barrier that is immediately broken down. Once they enter the flow of that kind of work and that kind of thing, then something that is able to be shared wider than just themselves and their teacher or the group that they're working with, but can be shared, particularly in an online forum, so that they then have a genuine, authentic audience for their work. That can not only freak them out initially, for maybe the first 1 or 2 times, but more importantly, it can immediately raise the bar of the expectations they have of themselves, knowing that they've got an audience, but also the pride that they feel for it, knowing that as soon as they click the button family members all wherever they might be, whenever they might be, all across the globe, can then see what they're doing and the work that they're producing, the achievements that they have, that kind of thing.
Okay, great. And Jo-Marie and Lee, what would you say?
I think definitely that content creation is, is the big move, and it's what's making a lot of difference. And that communication, being able to have an authentic audience for what they're doing, is really, really important, and it makes a difference to the students. And making sure that the technologies that are allowing for more engagement in what they're doing. I'm seeing things like iPad apps that allow, and Android apps that are just allowing kids to interact, use their oral language, using video and using sort of puppet shows and all those sort of things that allow them to to show their creativity, but it also engages them as well. And so they're engaging with the content, but they're doing it in a way that they are creating content for others, sharing that content with others, and doing it in ways that they can see the purpose for.
Great, thank you.
And everything
Nice
that
to see you there,
Jo-Marie said. Yes, nice to see you here, Barb.
Took me that long to find it. It didn't come to my university account.
Ah, okay. Barbara, we've just been I've just been asking people what they think is something that's really important for people to think about, and what you've noticed as the most successful kinds of things going on, and there seems to be a theme here about creating new content rather than just receiving it. What would you agree
absolutely. with? I'm thinking of a student agency, learner agency, and when students are making the decisions about what they want to learn and how they're going to learn it, I think it's more purposeful for them. And that brings in, if the assignment says, we're going to show our understanding of something in our local community, then the students have the choice of how they go about that, what particular focus they have, and then how they're going to show their learning as well.
Great. Yeah. So Lee?
And I think that in secondary, the teachers are often very NCEA focused, so it's really hard to let go of that driving need to get certain things done. But I've found as a teacher and certainly as a facilitator that the most powerful learning is done when you let the students actually create their own knowledge using the tools. So just thinking back to my own experiences as a teacher, if I could provide a booklet on all sorts of information about acids and bases, but if I actually assigned, the students to do it, and they chose what particular topic they were going to cover to put together into a booklet, and I'm talking a virtual booklet, then they actually learned a lot more, and they were much more prepared to read over what their peers had done and critique it and say, well, you got that bit wrong. And so yeah, definitely letting the students have choice, have some agency, work in a context of their choosing. That's
great.
Yeah. Ties in with that flipped learning that you were talking about too. Because you're talking about the students creating the content for other students, not just the teacher creating it.
That's right. And I did that kind of thing with plant processes in my own practice. Got the students to choose what were they going to talk about. Got them to critique some videos that were online and say, well, what did that person do that was, that you could have done better? and then now you're in charge. Don't make any mistakes like that person online did. So the onus is on you to go out and find out about that particular thing. Which thing are you going to do? Jolly good, that's your job. And so on.
Yeah. So what do you think are the biggest challenges for people dipping their toe into using digital technologies in classrooms? So this is a general question for all of you, I think.
I think it's teacher letting go control.
Scary stuff, yeah.
Scary stuff, yeah. And getting teachers to let go and actually listen to their students, because our kids actually know quite a bit.
True.
Yeah. I think also being able to let go actually involves a kind of, there's a midway kind of step where you can say to the students, look, all of this information's actually online already. There's some really good resources online around NCEA, and so if you fail to grasp something completely, you can go back to those original resources and check, did I actually understand what I needed to know for NCEA? So giving them the agency is the first thing, but there is that sort of midway step that helps teachers.
Great, yeah.
They've got to be prepared to give it a go. It's not how tech savvy you are or anything like that. You don't have to be tech savvy. What you have to be is be prepared to give it a go, to try it alongside your students, and just be prepared to dip your toe in the water and do something, rather than saying, well, I've always done it this way, I'll just keep on doing it that way. Think about exploring ways that could enhance the learning that's happening in the classroom.
Great, thank you. Anybody else?
I think when you consider the shift in practice from being, as Lee mentioned, the sage on the stage, to something else, it's kind of more facilitative learning and that kind of thing. While we are all saying don't be afraid to have a go and that kind of thing, we also need to acknowledge that it can be a fairly big shift for a person to make, because it involves changing your perception of yourself as a teacher, as a professional, and from there your practice. So it can involve things like assessing your values and your beliefs about education in general. I'm trying to not call it teaching, because we're trying to shift away from teacher, you will shout, thou shalt learn thus, kind of thing. And so yes, have a go, acknowledge that it's a big step, but then once you are considering those kinds of things, then the fact that your school's internet connection sucks and you've only got half an iPad in your classroom become, the kind of a small variable.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Barbara, what do you think would be some good advice too?
I think I listen to Dorothy Burt quite a bit, and she always says that students aren't always receptive to teachers learning alongside their students. She always says that teachers actually need to know their stuff, their content knowledge, but they also need to know how to use the technology. So sometimes you do have to just jump on in there, give it a go, and it's really not as bad as you think it is.
Yes, I think that's probably right, yeah. So as a final thing, do you have a nice sage, seeing as how we've been talking sages on stages, a sage piece of advice for my graduates wanting to be teachers?
Goodness me, that's a biggie. I just say my favourite saying is every long journey starts with one small step.
Right, thank you.
And I'll go with it needs to be taught, not caught.
Yeah.
And I would say be really clear on your purpose. And once you're clear on your purpose, everything else will fall into place.
Thank you.
I was going to say a lot of problems can be fixed with a chainsaw. But what I would encourage of everyone is sincerity. We talk about building relationships with our students because that helps them learn better and that kind of thing. Be sincere in your care of them. I want to get better at using Samoan phrases in my classroom. We'll be sincere about that. I want to try get digitally technological this year. Be sincere about that as well. And then if you are sincere about it, that's often conveyed to people who are in front of you or around you. And sincerity can get you a long way even after you make mistakes. Because your sincerity is expressed in your behavior and it is noticed by people. And when you get things wrong, they're more likely to forgive you for that and want to help you.
Yeah. Right.
Can I just add one thing in there, and that is to say that your student learners should realise that we are all learners. For example, this is the first time that we as a group have ever participated in a Google Hangout. And so we worked to overcome the difficulties that we had together. Took a bit of time, takes a bit of patience, but now we're all willing to, I'm sure, have another go at it and do a few more.
Great. So thank you very much, all of you. And I start teaching with my group mid-February, and I'm going to maybe use this as a little task for them to bring their ideas to class with, and maybe to think of some questions they would like me to ask you later, perhaps for another occasion, if that's okay with all of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Good as gold. And I'll stop the broadcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.